The power of dua is often underestimated or not well understood. What can we make dua for and how best to make it? In these testing times for the ummah, is it enough to just make dua? Assalamu alaikum, dear sisters, and welcome to another episode of Women's AM, the show that brings you news, topics of interest, advice, and much more. We'll be taking a look at what's been in the headlines during News Bites, discussing our main topic in her views, as well as giving advice on a dilemma in the other half. I'm Ayan, and joining me on the panel today are my lovely sisters, Zainab, Hassana, and our special guest sister, Khadija Ali. Assalamu alaikum, sisters. How are you all doing this fine morning?
Good.
Good, mashallah. One of the questions I wanted to ask you guys, since we live in such modern times, what is the most frequently used app on your phone, or that you use on your phone? So I'm going to start off with you, Khadija.
I would say Task Manager. It's basically to organise your daily tasks according to time, and you can kind of tick it off when you've done it. And I think in this day and age, we definitely need one of those apps.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think I might look into that. What about you, Hassana?
You know, I want to say something really productive like Sister Khadija, but to be honest, it's probably WhatsApp. And the thing is, there's so many different group chats. Actually, sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. So, yeah, it is WhatsApp. But, I mean, it's a good way to keep in touch with people.
What about you, Zainab?
Mine is actually WhatsApp, but I thought I'd say something different. I really use my YouTube app at the moment, so I'm always got my headphones in my ears listening to talks from my YouTube account, so I love it. It's so good, I gain so much from it. It's very easy and accessible.
I think mine is going to be the least productive of all in this list. Mine is probably Instagram. That's the one I love to use a lot because I love looking at pictures, so that's sort of my thing, as well as taking pictures of food and posting those up as well.
One of those people.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. So let's move on to our first segment, News Bites. In this segment, we take a look at what's been headlining on the news. So, sisters, what articles have we got this morning?
I've got one here from CBS Philadelphia, and the headline is The Jewels of Islam. And it's a really interesting article. It's about 120 women who have come together to form a network. And basically what they do is they go out and they visit elderly women who are on the verge of isolation or depression, and they actually go and befriend them and talk to them. And it's interesting because it's faith-based. So it's a group of Muslim women who are actually going out there and doing this. But they help women from all different backgrounds. And I think it's just really, really inspirational to see the effect it's had on some people. And the sister who actually runs it, she's 84 years old, and I think it's incredibly inspirational to see her out there being so active. And we know, of course, from Islam, it teaches us that we should, be kind to our neighbours. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, "He who believes in Allah and the Last Day, let him be kind to his neighbour." So it's just a really positive story, I felt, and it's just nice to see sisters out there doing this kind of work, and inshallah, it's something we can look into over here in the UK as well.
That's really lovely, because we hear a lot about the elderly feeling isolated and not enough people going to see them, and some of them passing away without anyone knowing that there was anything wrong in the first place. So this is really lovely, mashallah.
Absolutely.
What about you, Zainab? What have you got?
Okay, my first story is from Daily Mail. First Muslim family to move into Coronation Street. And its producers admit it's bizarre that there hasn't already been one, so that's the full title. So Coronation Street is essentially a very common soap that many people watch. This is the first Muslim family that cast that basically they're bringing into the show, and they're saying that this is long overdue because it's basically set in Manchester, I believe, and of course there are a lot of Muslims who live there, so it's not really representable. So on one side you can, any kind of more realistic representation in the media is always a good thing. My concern to do with this story is whenever I see Muslims in programs or anything to do with the media, it's always about what kind of role are they presenting to the Muslim ummah, because this is the thing where, as Muslims living in the West, we're always looking for people to identify with, isn't it? And when we see, a cast who, even though it is something that's technically entertainment, what kind of values is this family going to represent? What is it going to represent? Islamic mentality and character, or other than this? It's actually got me thinking that in terms of our role you know, how we function, you know, as Muslims living in the West. So it doesn't mean that we isolate ourselves. We're not supposed to just, you know, board our windows up and hide away. But it also doesn't mean that we have to kind of create this new way of behaving, you know, this new Islam that we understand. If Allah says that this is the way you live, whether you're in the East, West, wherever you are, North Pole, South Pole, it doesn't really matter. You live by Islam.
Definitely. It'd be nice to see sort of a balanced representation of what a Muslim family in Britain's like, because we've got, you know, two ends of the spectrum, isn't it? Either not practicing at all, a bit wild, and then the ones that looked a bit dodgy. So, Khadija, what's your take on this?
I think I completely agree with Zainab. I mean, from what we've seen so far, we've not really seen much of representation of Islam when it comes to dramas and stuff. Even in EastEnders, when they showed Muslim family, I mean, you as a Muslim just sitting there thinking, what? What is this about, sort of thing? And even in terms of the problems that Muslims face, I mean, this is what their aim is at the end of the day. And I think they've got it completely wrong. And it is lack of understanding. And it is to do with the fact that they're not very in touch with reality.
Yes. What have you got for us, Hasana?
I've got another story here from The Guardian, and the headline is How Lego Could Build Your Daughter's Career. I really like this story. It's interesting to see, for me, this idea of toys for boys and toys for girls. And, you know, it kind of takes you back to your childhood almost, thinking about the kind of toys that you used to play with. And it's all hinged around this whole research that's come out about the construction industry. And research has shown that it's very unbalanced in terms of gender representation. So there was a report which specifically looked at the field of architecture, and the research actually found that out of a poll of 710 female architects, 66% of them faced sexual discrimination. So it's quite interesting to see, really, that there are still fields out there that are quite kind of male-orientated and dominated. And it's not just construction. Other fields like mathematics and science, they're kind of quite, you know, generally male-dominated fields. And the journalist was really raising the question of what are we doing to kind of, you know, get this idea into our daughters' heads that any kind of career field is open to them should they wish to pursue that. So she was looking at the idea of giving her daughter Lego. And I just thought it was quite interesting. You know, this discussion is something which kind of takes me back to my childhood and makes me think about the kind of toys that, you know, I used to play with almost. It's an interesting topic.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
You know, it's got me thinking, you know, how many things would I have done if that would have been more diverse? And for me, Islam represents, you know, as long as it's halal, go for it. So there's no boundaries or barriers with that, and it's sad that culturally we're kind of, you know, penning girls in to a certain mode of thinking, isn't it?
Actually, my sister, she kind of has gone into quantity surveying, which is a field where there's, you know, there's hardly any women in that field. And actually, you know, even as a hijabi, she's kind of, you know, she's had the odd stares and things like that from professors even. So it's quite interesting for me, this article, because obviously on a personal level, I've seen this, you know. So.
But I think it's quite funny that they that there's this notion that toys have such a huge impact on sort of the choices that kids are going to make for themselves in the future where careers are concerned. And I think, really, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, because I used to play with Barbies all the time when I was younger, and I'm not a Barbie type now as an adult, and, you know, do you know what I mean? So I think it's interesting, though, definitely. Zainab, what else have you got for us?
So essentially, this article is a report. So 11 surprising facts about women and poverty from the Shariva report from the Time magazine. Some really sad findings within this report. So 1 in 3 American women, that's 42 million women and plus 28 million children, either live in poverty or on the brink of it. 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women, and these workers often get 0 paid sick days. That's actually that's a big problem right there. And then another point about higher education. Even though women outnumber men in higher education, men still make more money than women at the same level of educational achievement. So it basically shows across the board, whether you're in low income or high income jobs, there's this disparity still exists, and it's, you know, it's sad that we still find ourselves in this situation, and that these struggles even exist. You know, in America, it's unexpected, but it actually reminds me of. It makes me think about the injustice that's been done to these women. And basically, I'm reading a biography of Ummah at the moment, and everything just jumps out at me. But there's this part about the collection of zakat, and he would always try to push justice in every single aspect of his ruling, essentially. So with this one, there was a tax collector who collected basically a sheep, and it was apparently the sheep had huge udders, and Umar Anhu criticised him, saying, its owners did not give it willingly, do not cause distress to the people. I think if there's one thing that people feel today, it's distress and worry and concern. And it just makes me, surprised, think of the beauty of Islam and the fairness and justice of it.
Yes, subhanAllah. I mean, we've only got to look at our own history to see, mashallah, the great examples that we have and how we can live, such a life full of justice, and and having that peace of mind as well, and knowing that your wages are going to be sufficient, and if they're not, you're going to have the help there that you need. SubhanAllah. Hasana, what have you got for us?
Absolutely. My last one is from Forbes, and the headline is Ethical Chic, How Women Can Change the Fashion Industry. I found this one really interesting. It's basically a journalist who feels like there needs to be women in more kind of leadership positions in the fashion industry. We know that, of course, women are quite invested in the fashion industry. However, the positions at the top are generally occupied by men. And so she feels that women can be the catalyst for changing the fashion industry to become more ethical. And this is off the back of lots of discussions about the garment makers and the kind of wages that they're getting and things like that. And she touches on the fact that we as women, we've got a part to play in this, whether that's getting into more of the leadership roles or whether that's just choosing ethical things to source. And I thought that was quite interesting because, of course, Islam teaches us the importance of, paying people adequate wages and making sure that we're being responsible in the way that we shop. And it brings me back to this idea of just clothing and how we shop and the disposable way almost that we look at things now. There's no longevity in terms of how we view products. And I think, if we take, women who are quite interested in things like shopping and things like that, I think we need to look at our shopping habits and think about the way that we spend our money and whether there's kind of a balance between shopping ethically and, of course, shopping generally. So I think it's quite an interesting concept. And, we know that a lot of the people who are involved in the garment industry are women, so it definitely does affect them.
Zainab, what have you got for us?
Okay, my last article is Mum Diary, How to Survive the Second Baby, from Yahoo Lifestyle. I just thought this is interesting. Basically, I volunteer at a playgroup in my local mosque, and one thing you always see with mothers is that they're always, subhanAllah, putting themselves down and thinking, I'm not doing enough and I'm really worried about, looking after this child and doing a really good job. And she's actually gives some really nice advice about how to deal with the coming of a new child when you think back and you just go, the parent horror of not being able to tidy and not having food. I mean, she was saying she lived on biscuits while she had her first because she had no time to do anything. So good, nice advice like, be calm, you're a natural. I have confidence that you've done this already before. Your baby doesn't need all your waking attention. So this whole idea that it's okay to put your child down, it's okay to kind of let them, sort themselves out for a while and learn how to entertain themselves. Watching your language, not using negative language around the babies, and making time for yourself. And I thought that was the most interesting thing. So, of course, you can take that in a literal way, that go have a hobby, just relax, whatever. But for the Muslim women, I want to do that, but I also want to make sure that I still have a connection with Allah. Motherhood should be seen as that way anyway, but, go out, educate yourself, go to those talks, gain that knowledge. We still have those other responsibilities. I know a sister who, she's doing Open University degree on the side, subhanAllah, so to basically stretch ourselves, I think there's a lot of things that can be said.
I think the pressure on motherhood in terms of accountability, that you're accountable for your children, and I think we kind of tend to take it to the next extreme and not realising that, hang on a minute, we're also accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're also accountable for not looking after ourselves and our house. And I think one of the main things that I've seen is the fact that when it comes to motherhood, your child is basically going to be a reflection of you. So if you can attain that balance, which takes a bit of time, inshallah everything will work out, sort of thing. But you are, like you said, you've got to be well balanced in that.
No, mashallah, that's a good way to end it, is having that balance. And inshallah, I think with time, mothers will get the hang of it. I have to say that I'm still trying to get the hang of it at the moment.